I never thought my wedding would end up being worthy of a reality show, but here we are. My wedding day turned into an uncontrolled circus courtesy of my mom, and the consequences, well, let's just say karma did its best work. Hold on tight because this is going to get good. To make sense of everything, here's the context. My parents were married for 25 years before divorcing 3 years ago. My dad was always the hardworking and stable type. He had a good job as an engineer and we never lacked anything. He was always there for my siblings and me. My mom, on the other hand, was the typical social butterfly, always worried about appearances, organizing parties, following trends, and making sure everyone thought we were the perfect family. Spoiler alert, we weren't. The cracks in their marriage became evident when I was in college. My mom started going out more with her friends while my dad spent more time at work. It was like watching two people drift apart in slow motion. But the bomb exploded when it came to light that my mom had a lover, and not just any lover, a guy named Beck, her coworker. Classic. She tried to hide it, but one of her friends gossiped to my dad. He investigated a bit, confronted her, and guess what? She didn't even deny it. She told him he was boring and that she deserved more excitement in her life. Obviously, they separated shortly after. The divorce was a disaster. My mom fought tooth and nail to get as much money as possible. What she didn't know was that my dad, very smart, had hired a good lawyer from the beginning. Since she was the unfaithful one and he was the one who earned more money, the judge didn't grant her much of what she asked for. She ended up with much less than she expected, and she's been resentful ever since. After the divorce, my mom went crazy. She entered a midlife crisis and started posting ridiculous motivational phrases about being an independent queen, while spending her time complaining about how difficult her life was. Now she's become an expert in emotional blackmail with my siblings and me, making us feel guilty for not being there enough for her. Meanwhile, Beck became a permanent figure in her life. He wasn't the worst, but he always seemed a bit interested to me. He was younger than my mom, liked to show off, and seemed to enjoy the restaurants and trips she took him on more than her company. My siblings and I always kept a polite distance from them. Fast forward to my wedding. I was marrying my lifelong boyfriend, someone my dad adores. He has always supported our relationship, while my mom has been indifferent at best. I think it bothered her that I was closer to my dad, especially after the divorce. My dad and his girlfriend Lisa were invited, and so was my mom. Honestly, I hesitated a lot to uninvite her. I thought about it, and in the end I decided to do it to keep the peace. Big mistake. Everything at the beginning was perfect. The venue was beautiful, my husband looked amazing, and the ceremony went off without a hitch. My dad walked me down the aisle and looked so proud I almost cried. It was a beautiful moment. My mom, on the other hand, seemed desperate for attention. She showed up in a bright red dress that screamed, "Look at me," and tried to get into every photo. There was even an awkward moment in the family photos when she tried to push Lisa out of the frame. Lisa, being the queen she is, simply stepped aside with a smile, but the tension was in the air. Then came the reception. From the moment I saw my mom and Beck walk in arm, I knew something wasn't right. She hadn't even told me she was bringing him. And she still had the nerve to make a whole show of introducing him as if they were celebrities. It was ridiculous, but I decided to ignore it. I was enjoying my day too much to let it ruin it for me. But then came the moment to cut the cake, and that's when everything went south. My mom grabbed the microphone and started giving a speech. At first, the typical, "I'm proud of you, blah blah blah." But then she deviated from the script. She started talking about second chances and how love can find you when you least expect it. As soon as I heard that, I felt my soul leave my body. Suddenly, she calls Beck to the front, kneels down and proposes to him. At my wedding, in front of all my friends and family, the silence was total. You could hear a pin drop. My dad's face was a mixture of surprise and something else, maybe pity. Beck looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. My bridesmaids exchanged horrified glances, and I just wanted to crawl under the table and disappear. But as they say, karma is a bitch. And what my mom didn't know was that her little stunt was going to cost her dearly. Beck, visibly uncomfortable and not knowing what to do, rejected her right there in front of everyone. His exact words, according to several guests later, were something like, "This isn't the time or place, and I don't think this is what we talked about." Basically, He humiliated her in the same way she was trying to humiliate my dad and turn my wedding into her show. The consequences were immediate. Everyone was in shock, some uncomfortable, others just murmuring. My mother-in-law looked at me with pitying eyes, while my dad, calm as if he'd already seen it coming. My mom, on the other hand, seemed to want to scream, cry, and disappear all at the same time. But that's not all. It turns out that someone at the wedding recorded the whole thing on video and sent it to her rich aunt. Now this is where it gets good. We always knew that my mom was going to inherit everything from this aunt, who has no children. And when I say rich, I mean ridiculously rich. Huge mansion, antique car collection, investments that could support an entire country. My mom was already counting on that inheritance to continue with her lifestyle and show off to my dad. But when the aunt saw the video, she exploded. She's all about traditional values, family, and respect above all else. Seeing my mom making such a fool of herself at my wedding was the last straw. It didn't cost her anything to change her will and cut my mom out completely. Since then, my mom has been in total crisis. She keeps calling me, begging me to help her fix things with her aunt. She thinks I can magically make her change her mind. I told her it wasn't my problem, and that maybe she should have thought about the consequences before ruining my wedding. Needless to say, that didn't go over well with her. Now she's on Facebook throwing shade, saying that we betrayed her, and that family should always support each other. It's exhausting. I just want to enjoy my newlywed life, but the drama keeps pulling me back. Her latest emotional blackmail tactic is telling me that I failed as a daughter for not supporting her. She even had the audacity to say that if my marriage ever fails, I'll regret not having been on her side. Basically, she wants to drag me down with her into her chaos. Honestly, I don't know what to do anymore. Should I cut her out of my life? Or is there any way to fix this mess without syncing with her? What would you do in my place? In fact, it seems things have gone from bad to worse, at least for my mom. I still can't believe my wedding turned into a live soap opera, but oh well, here we are. After the disaster at the reception, I decided to distance myself from my mom, not only for my peace of mind, but because I really believe she has to learn to face the consequences of her actions. But of course she doesn't see it that way. My middle sister, the one who's a therapist, has managed to stay in contact with mom despite everything, which makes sense because out of the 5 of us, she's the calmest and most patient. While the rest of us have distanced ourselves for our own sanity, she has decided to stay there, even if it's just a little. She believes my mom is emotionally unwell and needs professional help. Honestly, I don't know how she has so much patience. I would have given up by now. Thanks to her, we've learned how mom's doing, and it's not good at all. In fact, it seems her situation has gone from bad to total disaster. Remember Beck? Yes, the guy my mom proposed to in the middle of someone else's wedding. Well, it turns out that the drama with him isn't only affecting her personally, but also at work. Apparently, their romance became the gossip of the moment in the office. Everyone found out, as you can imagine. It wasn't well received. It turns out that the company where they work has a super strict policy against relationships between bosses and subordinates. And yes, you guessed it, my mom is Beck's boss. Well, according to my sister, mom has already been dragged to human resources and given a warning. And it wasn't the hey, don't be so obvious in the office kind. No, it was serious. They made it clear that if things don't improve, her job is at risk. And here's where it all gets worse. Since she divorced my dad, my mom has been struggling with money. Losing her job would be a total disaster for her. She's barely been surviving and trying to maintain her lifestyle. And let's be realistic, her savings, if she ever had any, must be dwindling. And speaking of Beck, well, he disappeared completely. No calls, no messages, nothing. He vanished into thin air. And honestly, no one is surprised. My mom, on the other hand, is acting as if this were the greatest betrayal in the history of mankind. She won't stop complaining to my sister that Beck used her and cheated on her. But please, who didn't see this coming from miles away? Let's not forget how all this started. She proposed to him in the middle of a wedding that wasn't even hers, and without warning him. She totally embarrassed him in front of a lot of people. What did she expect? That he'd kneel too, tell her he loved her, and they'd ride off into the sunset together? This is classic of my mom. She creates chaos, gets into trouble, and then blames everyone else when things blow up in her face. From what we've been able to find out, Beck probably realized he'd gotten himself into a big problem. The drama, the awkwardness at work, the public proposal, it was all too much. Beck isn't exactly the type to stick around to deal with the chaos. My siblings and I are absolutely sure that he blocked her. My sister says Mom has been looking for him like crazy. She's called him, sent him messages, even emailed him, but nothing. Total silence. And instead of reflecting and realizing that maybe she should tone down the drama, she's decided to create even more drama. In her head, all of us, her 5 children, should be supporting her in this difficult time. She hasn't stopped telling my sister that we're ungrateful and disloyal for not being there as we should be. And what exactly does supporting her mean? Cleaning up the mess she created herself? Pretending that everything she's done is okay? But that's not all. Now she's decided to go after me with everything. According to my mom, I'm a selfish and irresponsible woman who doesn't care about her family. Yes, the same woman who ruined my wedding to put on her own show is now calling me selfish. But of course I'm the bad guy in the story. My sister, bless her patience, tried to reason with her. She explained to her, tooth and nail, what her actions were and how she ruined what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. But you know my mom. She didn't listen to a single word. Instead of accepting that she did wrong, she dismissed it all and said I was being too sensitive. And the best part? According to her, I should have felt honored to share the spotlight with her. Honored? The level of mental gymnastics she does to justify herself is impressive, really. This is exhausting. Every time I think there's a small chance she'll reflect, or at least pause to think about what she's done, she finds a way to create even more drama. She's so obsessed with playing the victim that she can't, or won't, see the damage she's caused. On the bright side, my husband and his family have been angels throughout all this. After what happened, I felt terribly embarrassed, but my mother-in-law took me aside and told me something that really calmed me down. She told me that sometimes family comes with extra baggage, and that's not a reflection of me or my character. Her words were so comforting that I felt a huge relief. My husband has also been a sunshine. He always tells me that this is just a bump in the road, and that it's not worth ruining our happiness over my mom's dramas. Tomorrow we're going on our honeymoon, and honestly I already want to run away from so much drama, at least for a week. We planned a super relaxing trip with no phones or internet, unless it's an emergency, of course. So I hope to come back feeling renewed and ready for whatever comes next. Thanks to everyone who has followed my story and given me advice. Your comments have helped me so much not to feel alone in this madness. When I get back, I'll let you know if there's any other news, or if my mom has finally decided to tone down the drama. Until then, wish me a week of peace away from all this. See you later. I thought that after my mom's disaster, everything would finally calm down, but no. Apparently the chaos wasn't over with me yet. The day we returned, I was unpacking and mentally preparing myself to return to normal life when I received a call from my mom's aunt. Yes, the same aunt from whom my mom expected to receive a large inheritance. First, I didn't know what to think. She asked me to come to her house the next day and told me that my siblings, my dad, and my mom were also going to be there. Honestly, I hesitated a lot. After everything that happened, the last thing I wanted was to be in the same room as my mom. The drama, the betrayal, the whole mess was too much for me. But the aunt insisted. She said it was something very important and that I had to be there, yes or yes. After a lot of back and forth, I ended up accepting. The next day, I arrived at my aunt's house, and let me tell you, the tension could be cut with a knife. My mom was already there, pacing back and forth in the living room, muttering things to herself. She looked like a bomb about to explode. And honestly, I didn't know if I was more nervous or more tired of dealing with her. She kept repeating the same thing over and over again. That she had been betrayed, that we were all ungrateful, that nobody cared about her. It was really uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. I decided that the best thing to do was stay out of it and not engage. But then my dad walked in, and it was like someone had flipped a switch on my mom. From 1 second to the next, her volume doubled. She started making sarcastic comments left and right. She had something to say about everyone, my dad, me, my siblings. No one was spared. She called us leeches, traitors, and ungrateful, all in one sentence, as if she were the victim of all this. It was absurd. I couldn't believe how she was twisting the whole story to make us look like the bad guys. But here comes the good part. Her aunt wasn't going to let her get away with it. She's one of the few people who isn't afraid of my mom, and honestly, watching her confront her was quite satisfying. She quickly put her in her place and told her to stop making a scene and sit down. You could tell my mom didn't like it one bit, but at that moment she had no choice but to obey. When we were all seated, the aunt finally explained why she had called us. She said she had been thinking for a while about what to do with her inheritance, and at that moment I saw how my mom straightened up suddenly. She clearly thought that the aunt had forgotten everything that happened and that she was about to announce that she would get the whole fortune, or at least a significant part of it. It was as if, in her mind, things were going to go back to being how she always imagined. But unfortunately for her, things weren't going to go her way. Then the aunt dropped the bomb. She told us that originally her plan was to leave most of her inheritance to my mom, which, to be honest, wasn't a surprise. My mom always made it clear that she was counting on that money to get out of her financial problems. But after everything that had happened recently, the scandal at the wedding, her attitude towards us, and the drama with Beck, the aunt realized that it was no longer the best option. So instead of leaving everything to my mom, she announced that she would divide the inheritance into 5 equal parts, one for each of us, her children. Yes, 5 equal parts. The moment the aunt said that, the entire room fell into a deadly silence. No one was prepared for that, but the best part was my mom's face. First, pure disbelief. It was as if her brain simply couldn't process what she had just heard. And then pure rage. Her eyes narrowed, she clenched her fists, and her whole body tensed. I knew what was coming. She exploded. She started yelling that the aunt had been manipulated by us, that it was all part of a plan to steal what was hers. She was incapable of accepting that her own actions led her to that point. Instead of taking responsibility, she attacked. She said we wanted to ruin her, leave her in poverty, and watch her fail. Ridiculous. Zero self-awareness. But wait, because there's more. Not only did she accuse us, she also yelled at her aunt. She told her that after everything she had done for her for years, she owed her that inheritance. I swear I had to bite my tongue not to burst out laughing. What everything she had done for her is she talking about? This is the same woman who threw a tantrum at her own daughter's wedding and caused all that drama. But according to her, her beautiful track record of behavior entitled her to keep the entire inheritance. This is the best example of how she always thinks the world owes her something, no matter what she does. But the aunt remained completely calm, calmer than any of us could have been in that situation. She simply said, "This decision is final," and didn't let my mom continue with her show. It was obvious that the aunt had already made up her mind. Period. There was nothing more to discuss. But of course my mom wasn't ready to accept it. At that point, staying any longer was only going to make things worse. My siblings and I looked at each other, and we all knew it was time to leave. My dad left with us too, and honestly the whole way back we spent trying to process what had just happened. But what shocked me the most was seeing how my mom turned against all of us, even my sister. Yes, the only one who was still trying to help her. My sister, the therapist, was the only one who still talked to mom, and even her she accused of being part of a plan to destroy her. It was as absurd as it was heartbreaking. She looked truly hurt. And this was the last straw. I wouldn't blame her if she decides to cut off the relationship completely. For now, we're all trying to get back to our normal lives and leave this mess behind. I'm focusing on work, spending time with my husband, and recovering the peace I've been losing for months since the wedding. My siblings are doing the same, although we've been in touch more often to support each other. I don't know if there's anything left to fix with my mom, but I'm not going to wait for her to change either. Thank you for reading and for all your advice and words of support. It's been crazy, and I appreciate having a space where I can share all this. If anything else happens, I'll let you know. But for now, I just want some peace in my life. So many things have happened that it's honestly been total chaos. I think we've gone through every possible emotion. Frustration, relief, disbelief, everything. But I'm finally starting to feel like this chapter is coming to an end. Although obviously with a little more drama along the way because of course we're talking about my mom. After the show at her aunt's house, everything fell into an awkward silence for a moment. I even thought, maybe she's finally reflecting. Maybe she's realized the consequences of her actions and is working on herself. Naive me. Turns out she was just waiting for the moment to make her next move. This time she was the one who reached out, but not to me but to my sister, the therapist. She's always been the only one who has given her the benefit of the doubt, despite everything. She's patient, kind, and somehow still manages to see the good in people. But not even she expected to receive that call. Hold on tight because this is a bombshell. Mom was fired. Yes, after months of barely keeping her job, she finally crossed the line. Remember Beck, the guy she gave a surprise marriage proposal to at my wedding? Well, it turns out he got another job at another company. Good for him, I guess. He went back to his old office one last time to pick up his things, and my mom decided that was the perfect time to confront him. And where did she do it? At the office. Because of course, great idea when you already have problems with HR. According to what my sister managed to find out, Mom made such a scene that HR had to intervene. I don't know exactly what she said to him, but it was serious enough to seal her fate. They took her out of the building, escorted, and a few days later, her dismissal became official. Shocking, but at the same time it isn't. I knew the company had a strict no relationships between bosses and subordinates policy. They had already warned her several times about her behavior, but instead of playing it safe, she let herself get carried away by her emotions and threw her job away. Now Beck is gone from there and probably moving on with his life without any loss. My mom, on the other hand, is left without a job, without income, and surprise, surprise, without taking any responsibility. Instead of acknowledging her mistake, she looked for my sister to ask for help. At first, my sister hesitated to get involved, and that says a lot because she's always the one who tries to help. But of course, my mom didn't ask for help humbly. No, she used her usual tactics. I've always been there for you. Spoiler, she hasn't. How can you abandon your own mother in her time of need? Classic manipulation. And it didn't work out as she expected. When the guilt didn't work, she changed her strategy. She said she was even willing to apologize to me if that was what it took to fix things. But my sister realized immediately that it wasn't a genuine offer. It was just another attempt at manipulation to get what she wanted. Still, my sister decided to help her, but with well-defined limits. She told her that she would lend her some money to get her stabilized and nothing more. No rebuilding the relationship, no weekly calls, no pretending everything was okay. She made it very clear that it was a one-time thing and that she was doing it because she felt it was her duty as a daughter, not because she wanted to recover the relationship. I'm so proud of her for setting those boundaries. It's not easy, especially when dealing with someone like our mom. After that, my mom sent me a message. It was an apology, although calling it an apology is being generous. It was more of a vague message saying that she had made mistakes, and that she hoped we could move on as a family. She didn't mention the wedding, the proposal, or the years of damage she has caused. It felt empty, as if she was just checking a box instead of actually trying to repair anything. I didn't reply, and honestly I doubt I will. I've spent too much of my life trying to navigate her drama and protect myself from her toxicity. If I've learned anything from all this, it's that it's okay to set boundaries and prioritize my peace. I don't owe her a relationship just because she's my mother. And everyone else, we're all moving on in our own way. My siblings and I are closer than ever, which ironically is the only positive thing that has come out of all this. My husband has been my rock throughout this whole process, and his family has supported me a lot too. I truly feel lucky to have them by my side. My mom, on the other hand, burned almost everyone she had left. She has distanced herself from her own children, her aunt, and even her former co-workers. It's sad, but she brought it on herself. At this point, it's up to her to decide if she wants to change. But as for me, I'm done waiting for her to become the mother I needed. Thanks to everyone who followed this roller coaster of a story here on Reddit. Your advice, support, and yes, even the hard truths meant more than I can express. Sharing all this has been cathartic, and I'm very grateful to this community. It's time to look ahead and leave the past behind.